This UPR takes place amidst an ongoing, widespread assault on the right to freedom of expression and other fundamental rights in Azerbaijan. That the government has noted the vast majority of recommendations which aim to protect these rights gives little hope of the situation improving. Constitutional amendments approved in 2016 marked a watershed moment. The weakening of checks and balances and consolidation of presidential powers facilitated a renewed crackdown on journalists, activists and political opponents. This accelerated the severe shrinking of civic space, already weakened by regressive changes to laws governing NGOs and the arrest of leading human rights defenders and journalists in 2014. The government has equipped itself with an expansive and expanding legal toolbox to restrict expression online and offline. This includes provisions which criminalize smearing or humiliating the honor and dignity of the president, slander or insult and defamation. They must be repealed. When national laws are deliberately used to criminalize dissent, insulate the state from criticism, quell political opposition and silence journalists and HRDs, it is no defense to claim, as the government does, that individuals detained for their exercise of fundamental rights have violated the law. Such detentions are arbitrary and violate human rights law. The revolving door of arrests and imprisonment sends a clear message of the consequences of challenging the official line. More than 120 journalists, human rights defenders, writers, activists and political figures remain imprisoned. We continue to call for the immediate and unconditional release of all those detained, including Afgan Muqtadi, Seymour Hazi and Mehman Husseinov. Their convictions must be quashed and all forms of harassment against them cease. Physical attacks against journalists and activists continue to be perpetrated in impunity, fostering a culture of self-censorship. We remain deeply concerned by the failure to investigate the murders of journalists Rasim Aliyev, Elmar Husseinov and Rafik Taghi, as well as the death by hanging of blogger Mehmet Galandarov in his jail cell. His death was declared a suicide in the absence of evidence. The government must investigate all attacks, bring the perpetrators to justice and strengthen protection measures for at-risk individuals. Thank you, Mr. Vice President.
Gracias. Le ofrezco la palabra.
Thank you. I call on Amnesty International.
Mr. Vice President, politically motivated prosecution and imprisonment of government critics and other dissenting voices on politically motivated charges is one of Amnesty International's long-standing human rights concerns in Azerbaijan. Currently, over 100 victims of politically motivated prosecution languish in Azerbaijani jails. We therefore deeply regret Azerbaijan's rejection of recommendations to end all politically motivated legal proceedings and release all persons held for exercising their rights to freedom of expression, association and assembly. Amnesty International and other human rights groups have documented numerous cases in Azerbaijan of prosecution and imprisonment of government critics on trumped-up charges, in proceedings that manifestly breach international law and fair trial standards. In this regard, we welcome Azerbaijan's acceptance of recommendations to ensure the independence, impartiality and transparency of the judiciary and to respect the rights of lawyers. Many prisoners, and especially victims of politically motivated prosecution, routinely allege being subjected to torture and other forms of ill treatment while in detention. We therefore welcome Azerbaijan's acceptance of a recommendation to improve conditions in prisons and detention centres and ensure access to medical care. However, this does not go far enough, and we profoundly regret that Azerbaijan has rejected more specific recommendations to prevent torture and other ill treatment in detention and to ensure that all allegations of torture are investigated effectively, independently and impartially and the perpetrators brought to justice. Thank you, Mr. Vice President.
Gracias. Le ofrezco la palabra.
Thank you.